All right, so the Creation Museum response to Bill Nye the Science Guy. The Creation Museum, obviously, they're part of Ken Ham's ministry over there in Kentucky.
Yes.
We had a chance to check out that museum. Well, they came up with a response to Bill Nye's video, and we'd like to show that to you now.
The first point that Bill Nye makes is that denial of evolution is unique to the United States. I'm sure he knows better than that. After all, not only is evolution criticized widely in the United States by at least 40% of its citizens, but evolution is believed to be false in the Muslim world. Creationism is certainly taught in South Africa, India, South Korea, Brazil. Smaller factions of creationists probably are found in Japan, Israel, Australia, New Zealand, and Canada.
Bill Nye implies in his video that parents and other adults are doing a great disservice to children by teaching them about biblical creation. Well, you might be interested to know that I also teach my young daughter about evolution, and I know many other Christian parents who do the same. Children should be exposed to both ideas concerning our past. Being a good scientist and a mom, I want my daughter to be educated about evolution so that she can see the inherent problems with it. For example, the complete lack of a genetic mechanism that allows organisms to gain genetic information to go from simple to complex over time.
Bill Nye also makes the comment that the world becomes fantastically complicated if one believes in creation. I would argue the world becomes fantastically complicated if one believes in evolution. You see, in evolution, you have to look at that hummingbird feeding at your feeder and assume that all of its parts have somehow come together by random purposeless change combined with natural selection, which is nothing more than differential reproduction.
We need to understand in the video that Bill Nye is confusing observational science with historical science. Observational science is what I call here and now science. It gives us inventions and technology like computers and vaccines. We can observe it, test it, and repeat it. Historical science deals with the past, and both evolution and creation fall into that category. We cannot test, observe, or repeat them. Yes, we do see fossils in distant stars, but their history of how they got here really depends on our worldview. Do we start with man's ideas about the past, who wasn't here during the supposed billions of years of Earth history? Or do we start with the Bible, the written revelation of the eyewitness account of the eternal God who created it all? Rather than being inconsistent, as Bill Nye states, observational science confirms the literal history in Genesis.
The second point that Bill makes in his video is that evolution is fundamental to all life science, that life science can't be practiced without it. This is certainly not the case. The evolutionist Adam Wilkins, publishing in Bioessays, Volume 22, number 12, says as follows: while the great majority of biologists would probably agree with Theodosius Dobzhansky that nothing in biology makes sense without evolution, yet, he said, most can conduct their work quite happily without particular reference to evolutionary ideas. He concluded that evolution would appear to be an indispensable and unifying idea, and at the same time, a highly superfluous one.
Now, I may be wrong here, but I think we could observe what Genesis says in creation today. You can see animals bringing forth after their own kind. You can see everything is complete in creation. You don't see one bird flying in a circle because it's got one wing. The other hasn't evolved. Everything's evolved to its maturity. You know, dogs have got 4 legs. You and I have got 2 legs. We've got 2 eyes. So we see everything that Genesis says, every animal bringing forth after its own kind, reflected in creation as it is.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And, you know, we get often, I guess, accused of not believing in evolution, but truth be told, we do believe in evolution. We do believe in microevolution, and there's a difference between microevolution and macroevolution. Microevolution, one species within its species, it stays within the species, and there's no added DNA within that. But we don't believe that one species can turn into a completely different species with new DNA, new material evidence that it doesn't exist.
Now, there's no evidence for that. That's what's called the missing link, isn't it? They keep looking for it, hoping they'll find it, but they never find it. And Darwin said they'll find it one day, and it's been, 200 years, and they haven't found it.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, what is it, Time magazine, I have a quote here. It says, scientists concede that their most cherished theories are based on embarrassingly few fossil fragments and that huge gaps exist in the fossil record. I mean, it's funny. But, it actually leads on into the next question here. Doesn't the Big Bang Theory disprove the Genesis account of creation? And this question, I think, begs the question, assumes that there was a Big Bang. But if you grab a hold of the premise, hey, doesn't the Big Bang discredit the Genesis account of creation? What
Absolutely not. No, there's a Big Bang when God spoke. Although scientists are beginning to see now that you need materials to make sound. And if there was nothing and then there was a Big Bang and no materials as yet until a bang came, it would have been the big silence that would have happened. Yeah. So there was no bang.
All right. A little too deep for me, but I think that's very interesting. Have you ever heard of an explosion creating order?
No. This doesn't happen.
It doesn't. I mean, a terrorist bomb doesn't create order.
Always creates chaos. Always.
And that's the idea here with the Big Bang, that we would have an explosion. First of all, we don't know what explodes. There's got to be some material there in order to explode.
Right, so there had to be something pre-existent for the explosion to take place.
Which would never happen. I mean, if you were to empty out your garage, take out every piece of articles, every plastic, every metal, take out the air, the oxygen, the carbon, take out everything inside there, would you safely come to the conclusion that a Mercedes-Benz would evolve there in 10 years?
No.
20 years?
No.
Or 200 million years?
No, it needs more.
And that's what it is. So you think, all right, something is going to come from nothing if just given enough time.
Yeah, time is the Santa Claus. It's the magic wand maker. Time. Father Time. Billions of years, then I can believe. Then the belief comes alive once that fairy godmother or whatever it is waves that magic wand of time.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
And see, here's the thing with scientists. We can get scientists and they can recreate... But your greatest scientist that has ever lived can never can't even create a grain of sand.
Not from nothing.
From nothing.
Yeah.
Right, and that's the thing. In Hebrews, it says that God created the heavens and the earth, and that Hebrew word is the word barch, which means out of nothing.
I'm impressed.
Out of nothing.
I like the hummingbird thing. Sue and I have got these bird things out, but put a reflective on the glass so the birds can't see us, hang bird things so birds come along to get fed. And now and then we see hummingbirds come, and we just stand there with our mouths open in awe at the hummingbird. What's its wings flap 400 times per second or something crazy like that. And it's just, there's no helicopter that man's ever created that moves like a hummingbird. It's just real, like that, very fast and incredible. And to say that happened from rock, that's what it all comes down to. The Big Bang, there was rock coming through space, there was kind of life on the rock, and the earth kind of in the sea, and sun, and giraffes, and horses, and cows, and cats, and elephants, and birds, and trees, and bananas, and apples, and oranges, and the human beings all came from that rock.
Bananas.
Yeah, it is bananas.
I remember listening to Scotty open air preach one time, and he pulled out a picture of Mount Rushmore, and he was talking to an atheist.
It's a big picture.
And he says, "Hey, can I convince you that Mount Rushmore happened by chance?" And the person said, "No, absolutely not."
No.
He said, "Well, who created Mount Rushmore? Who carved it out?" And the guy had no information whatsoever on Mount Rushmore.
Right.
But you could not convince the guy that Mount Rushmore happened by accident.
Those faces on Mount Rushmore.
The faces on Mount Rushmore.
Yeah.
Think of the complexity now of the person who carved the faces into Mount Rushmore.
Right.
From the human eye to the taste buds to the heart to the everything. It's absolutely amazing. Yet we can look at the human body and go, it happened by chance, just given enough time.
Scotty's point was those four faces of the four presidents on Mount Rushmore couldn't have happened by chance, but you're saying those four presidents all happened by chance.
Right.
So it wasn't just rock that was carved out by the weather. You're saying that those living eyeballs, 137 million light-sensitive cells, and the character, and the blood vessels, and the heart, and the liver, lungs, and kidneys, and the hair, and moustache, and nasal hair, all happen by chance. It's crazy.
Yeah. And, I mean, if you're an atheist, you have to at least concede to the fact that it leaves us scratching our head how somebody can look at Mount Rushmore and say, hey, that could never have happened by chance. However, the human eyeball, that could happen by chance with, what is that, 100 million light-sensitive cells?
137 million light-sensitive cells.
Wide-angle lens, instantaneous reproduction.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's absolutely amazing what the human eyeball can
So look in
do.
the mirror, Mr. Atheist. There's your evidence of God's existence in the mirror looking back at you.
And the Bible says that we are fearfully and wonderfully made. Well, there's a missing link chart. Boy, it's been since grade school, I think, since I've taken a look at this. But you have it inside your evidence Bible, the missing link chart. And there it is, from Lucy all the way up to modern man. Modern man obviously thinks that we came from
Now,
a
this
monkey.
is from my friend Jack Chick, from Chick Tracks. I think it's from his track that he kindly gave us permission to reproduce that.
Wow.
So look at that, the little monkey deer, Lucy, Heidelberg, and a lot of those are bogus.
You know, G.K. Chesterton, he said the evolutionists seem to know everything about the missing link, except the obvious fact that it's still missing.
No, he's not. He's over there in our other studio.
He's in our other studio. You know, and I heard Richard Dawkins say, hey, you're a missing link. I'm a missing link. We are all missing links. Everything is a missing link all the way up till today. But he's missing the point. The point is you don't have any half bird, half dogs.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and so we have scientists and people that come along and say, you're missing the point. You're not understanding. No, I'm understanding the point. You know, I understand that with my presupposition, I presuppose things to be a certain way. I understand that. I get it. But also the atheist has to presuppose and take a greater leap of faith, as we just demonstrated with Mount Rushmore, than the Christian does, than the theist.
Absolutely.
So we want to show you now Ken Ham's response to Bill Nye's video. We are running out of time, but this is Ken Ham's response. I'm going to be speaking with Ken Ham in 2 weeks at theproofconference.com.
Hi, this is Ken Ham, President and CEO of Answers in Genesis and the Creation Museum. Recently, a YouTube video featuring a person called Bill Nye, the Science Guy, received millions of views. Now, the video was called Creationism is Inappropriate for Children. Well, I really believe we should call Bill Nye the Science Guy, Bill Nye the Humanist Guy. You see, Bill Nye received the Humanist of the Year award in 2010. So even though Bill Nye had some wonderful programs on PBS TV teaching exciting things about science, you know, when he was experimenting and putting things together and so on, and, you know, he did some real observational science there, Bill Nye also has an agenda to teach children not to believe in God, to teach them their result of evolutionary processes, that they came from slime over millions of years. In fact, Bill Nye really doesn't understand science. I mean, the word science means knowledge. And you can divide science into historical science, that's talking about the past, or observational science, that's the science that builds our technology. He says if you deny evolution to children, they're going to have problems because we need engineers. Well, wait a minute. Engineering and evolution? What has evolution got to do with engineering? I mean, Bill Nye himself actually is not a scientist. He studied mechanical engineering. And he worked for Boeing at one stage. I hope he did not apply his evolutionary principles to any of Boeing's airplanes, because if he did, I wouldn't want to be flying in them. I don't want to fly in something that was built by chance random processes. What do you think, all the parts, just lay them out there on the runway and they come together or something? No, of course he didn't apply his evolutionary ideas to his engineering at Boeing. Otherwise, we'd be in real trouble. Bill Nye is really implying that if we're going to teach children creation, that it's really a form of abuse, that creationism is inappropriate for children. I tell you what is real abuse, and I tell you what is inappropriate for children. When you take generations of kids and you teach them they're just animals, there's no God, you're a result of millions of years of evolutionary processes. You just came from some slime over millions of years. Who determines right and wrong? You do. Who determines what's good and bad? You do. What is marriage? Whatever you want to make it to be. You know, it's really people like Bill Nye that are damaging kids. Creationists are teaching children that they're special, that they're made in the image of God, and of course giving them a basis for developing technology, that we can trust the laws of logic, we can trust the laws of nature, we can trust the uniformity of nature. And you know, Bill Nye really doesn't understand science. He's called Bill Nye the Science Guy. He doesn't understand science. He doesn't understand the difference between observational science and historical science. I mean, he talks about the fact that, oh, we've got these ancient bones, we've got radioactivity. Wait a minute, of course we can observe radioactivity and we can experiment with it. But when it comes to bones, like dinosaur bones, you don't dig them up with labels telling you how old they are, or dig them up with photographs telling you when they lived. He doesn't teach children how to think critically. He doesn't teach them how to think about science. He wants to teach them what to think, and he confuses historical science, beliefs about the past, and observational science that develops your technology. He puts those together and doesn't distinguish between the two. If evolution were true, I mean, it'd be so obvious to the kids that it's true, but it's not. The way to convince kids about evolution is you have to do what Bill Nye the Humanist guy wants. You protect them from hearing anything about creation, you totally indoctrinate them, you brainwash them, you don't teach them to think critically at all, don't teach them the difference between historical science and observational science. You just want to make sure they only hear about evolution, and that's it. Creationists, of course, are very happy to teach their children about evolution and teach the problems with it and teach their children how to think critically and the difference between historical science and observational science. Isn't it interesting how Christians are not frightened to teach their children about evolution? Two of our scientists here at the Creation Museum, Dr. Georgia Purdom, who has a PhD in molecular genetics, and Dr. David Menton, who has a PhD in biology, have also put up a YouTube video dealing with some of the statements that Bill Nye has made. So I encourage you to go and watch their response to his video entitled Creationism is Inappropriate for Children, and see why you don't want Bill Nye the Humanist guy teaching your children.
Boy, that's some interesting things that Ken Ham had brought out. Link, what do you think about that? Apparently Link's not into that.